Breaking news! Hey Browns fans, we have a lot to discuss here, because the Cleveland Browns are in the market for solutions for the team, but will Andrew Berry be able to do what is necessary? Are you satisfied with what Berry has done for the Browns? Let us know in the comments, like and share the news. The Kirk Cousins situation has taken an unexpected turn and has major implications for the Cleveland Browns quarterback search. For weeks, many, myself included, believed that the Atlanta Falcons would release Cousins, allowing him to become a free agent and sign elsewhere on a cheap deal. That did not happen. Atlanta paid his $10 million roster bonus, signaling, for now, that they would keep him on the team. But does anyone really believe he will be there in Week 1? This is where things get interesting. If the Browns still want Cousins, the only path left is a trade, and that changes everything. When we first talked about Cousins as an option for Cleveland, the appeal was obvious, a veteran quarterback at a bargain price. Had he been released, the Browns could have signed him to a veteran minimum deal, similar to what Russell Wilson did last year with the Steelers. But now, the cost isn't just a contract, it's a draft pick. And here's the question, is Kirk Cousins worth giving up assets for? Because when you break it down, it's not as simple as just acquiring him. There's also the contract situation. Right now, Cousins carries a $27.5 million base salary for 2024. That's not a number the Browns should want to take on. The only way a trade makes sense is if one of two things happens. First, the Falcons eat a chunk of his salary in exchange for better draft compensation. Second, Cousins agrees to restructure his deal, taking a lower salary upon arrival in Cleveland. Would Atlanta be willing to pay part of his salary just to move him? Maybe. We've seen teams do it before. But would Cousins agree to rip up his current contract and take a pay cut just to be traded? That seems far less likely, and that's why this situation is so tricky. The Browns are in a position where they need to add a quarterback, but how much are they willing to invest in a guy like Cousins? If Atlanta is serious about keeping him as a backup for Michael Penix Jr., then maybe this isn't even a conversation. But let's be honest, how realistic is that? Keeping Cousins as a backup when he doesn't want to be there? Keeping him in the same locker room as the rookie they're trying to develop? That doesn't sound like a smart plan for the Falcons. So what happens next? Do the Browns call Atlanta's bluff and wait until August, hoping that the Falcons eventually cut ties with Cousins? That's a bold strategy. Because if the Browns wait too long and don't land another veteran in the meantime, they could find themselves scrambling for options deep into the offseason. Or do they pull the trigger on a trade now, knowing it will cost them a draft pick and potentially a decent amount of salary? If a trade does happen, what would the compensation look like? A comparable deal would be Justin Fields, who was sent from Chicago to Pittsburgh for a conditional 6th-round pick that could become a 4th if he plays 50% of the snaps. That's likely the ballpark for Cousins. Maybe a 6th that becomes a 5th if he plays a certain number of games. Maybe even a straight-up 5th-rounder. But here's the key, if you trade for Cousins, you have to change his contract. Paying him nearly $30 million makes no sense. If he agrees to a pay cut, then sure, the trade becomes more reasonable. But anything more than a late-round pick and a restructured contract? That's a deal-breaker. And here's where the Browns have to be careful. Because if they're willing to give up draft capital for a veteran quarterback, why stop at Cousins? Why not explore other options? Why not look for a younger quarterback with more upside? So Browns fans, it's time to weigh in. Should Cleveland trade for Kirk Cousins? Should they wait and hope Atlanta releases him? Or is there another quarterback out there who makes more sense? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And let's not ignore the risk Cleveland is taking by considering Kirk Cousins. Because if the Browns trade for him and things don't work out, they won't be stuck with another quarterback controversy, they'll be stuck paying for it. Let's say they give up a conditional pick, something like a 6th that turns into a 4th if Cousins plays 50% of the snaps. That might not seem like much, but what happens if Cousins doesn't pan out? What if he struggles behind Cleveland's offensive line? What if he's just okay, good enough to keep the Browns in games, but not good enough to win when it matters most? What then? You've given up draft capital, taken on salary, and still don't have a long-term answer at quarterback. That's the nightmare scenario. And that's exactly why the Browns need to be extremely careful about how they approach this. Andrew Berry is known for being aggressive in roster construction, but he's also strategic. He's not the kind of GM who makes a move just for the sake of it. He likes value. He likes flexibility. And right now, the Browns don't have much of that when it comes to the quarterback position. And that's what makes me wonder, are the Browns just biding their time? Are they looking at guys like Cousins and Wilson as short-term solutions while they wait for a bigger move down the road? Because here's what we know, if Cousins comes to Cleveland, he's not a long-term answer. He's a stopgap. And if you're trading for a stopgap, you better have a plan for what comes next. All right, Browns fans, let's talk about Myles Garrett's massive new contract extension and a very interesting clause hidden within it. This isn't just a big payday for Garrett, it could also give us a glimpse into the future of the NFL. Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio got his hands on a copy of Garrett's 4-year, $160 million extension, and he found something that caught our attention. The deal includes up to $1 million in roster bonuses per year, based on how many games Garrett is on the active roster on game day. But here's where things get really interesting. The contract is structured to account for a potential expansion of the NFL's regular season from 17 to 18 games. That's right. If the league eventually adds an 18th game, Garrett's per-game bonus structure will automatically adjust so that he still earns the full $1 million, just spread across the new number of games. The contract specifically states that if there is a change in the number of regular season games, the per-game bonus will be recalculated accordingly. In simple terms, if the NFL adds an 18th game, Garrett would earn $55,555.55 per game instead of his current per-game rate for 17 games. Why does this matter? Well, let's look at the big picture. In 2021, the NFL expanded from 16 games to 17 games and reduced the preseason from 4 games to 3. That change was controversial at the time, but now it's widely assumed that the league and the NFL Players Association will eventually agree to expand again, this time to 18 games, likely cutting another preseason game in the process. The current collective bargaining agreement between the NFL and the NFLPA runs through 2030, the same year Garrett's new deal expires. While nothing is set in stone, this contract language suggests that the Browns, Garrett's agents, and likely many other teams are already preparing for the inevitable addition of an 18th regular season game. Think about it, NFL owners have been pushing for more regular season games for years. More games means more revenue, and with TV deals, broadcast rights, and international games expanding the NFL's reach, it seems like a matter of when, not if, the schedule will expand again. Do you think the NFL should move to an 18-game season? Would you rather see more meaningful games and one less preseason matchup, or do you worry about player safety and the impact of an even longer season? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more updates. Let's go, Browns!